Hello and welcome to Scotty Kilmer Live Car Talk Podcast, where you can ask me questions live. I'm using my 51 years experience to tell you the truth about cars. Ask car questions. Ask meaning of life questions. I don't care. Good ones, funny ones, serious ones. We're here to have a little fun and to help people out. Remember, just ask your questions on the live chat on the YouTube live video here, and I'll pick the best ones and answer them. First question is Public Disturbance Club. Why does a 2006 Dodge Charger Hemi have shoes as well as pads? Very good question. Well, it's because it's well built in the braking system. Toyotas, a lot of them use the same system. You have disc brakes in the back to stop the car when you slam on the brakes. But you also have drums, which are your emergency brakes. So when you step on the emergency brake, the big drums up and hold it up. A lot of cars are made cheaper these days. If they have discs on the back, the discs calipers will have a little rod that pulls and tightens them up as the emergency brake. But that's kind of a crappy system, actually. The big old drum emergency brakes work better. So in the back, you've got disc brakes that stop it normally, but then the drum brakes are for when you step on the emergency brake, and they're nice and solid. It's a very good system. It costs more to make it that way. That's why a lot of the newer ones have discs in the back that are the emergency, and they don't have drum emergency brakes anymore. That's a very good design. Like I say, Toyota uses it too. Next question. Nicholas Hinson says, what do you think of the 2010 Toyota Corolla Sport? Well, Toyota Corollas are great vehicles, and they can last a really long time. The acronym SPORT, though, I think that's kind of stretching. It's not a sports car by any stretch of the imagination. But, you know, they look a little better, and they're a little bit zippier, especially if you get a standard transmission one. Better than the automatic ones for driving around and speed. But they're very solid, reliable cars. I mean, they can last a really long time. I just technically really wouldn't call them a sports car. Next question. Danny says, hey, Scotty, my car has heavy steering. What should I do? Okay, if your steering is hard to turn, of course, the first thing you want to do is check your power steering. Check the fluid. It might be low on fluid. Make sure the belt's still on and everything. But if it's not that, the best thing to do is jack the car up in the air and check the suspension. I've got a video how to check out your own car suspension system. Shows you the whole thing, how to check it. Because if your ball joints are worn, or let's say your control arms are bent, then things aren't going to turn smooth and it's going to feel heavy. And of course, always check your front tires, because tires have a lot to do with how your car handles. And if one tire is low and one tire is higher on the air, it's going to make it handle heavy too. Always check the simple things first. Next question. Adelio says, hey, Scotty, do you prefer manual or automatic? Well, if I'm seriously driving a car, of course, I prefer a standard transmission. You have more control, you can take off faster and stuff, but I'm like the prototypical American. I'm lazy when I'm in traffic. So if I go to Boston to visit my son there, hey, I rent a car that's an automatic transmission. Jeez, that traffic in Boston from the airport going out is horrendous. You just stop and go traffic. Yeah, everybody wants an automatic then, because it's such a pain to be continually shifting when the car's in a traffic jam the whole way. So, a lot of Americans, they'll only buy an automatic. Next question. John Smith said, my Nissan Frontier is making a grinding noise when I start it sometimes. Okay, generally that's your starter. If it only does it while you're starting the car and you hear a grinding noise, that usually means your starter's going out. And in that case, you're best to change it out sooner than later, because the way starters work are they're electric motors, but then they have a drive gear. When you turn it to start it, the drive gear pops out and engages with your flywheel. If that's starting to wear and you hear grinding, eventually it will wear the teeth on the flywheel. And in order to change the teeth on a flywheel, you got to change the whole flywheel. You got to pull the transmission off the car, and that's a very expensive job. Taking two bolts off and changing the start is usually a simple job on most cars, but changing a flywheel is very expensive. Fierce Jaw says, do you trust Brake Check for service? I don't trust anybody for service. That's how I became a mechanic. When I was young, it's like, I'm not going to pay a mechanic to work on my car. I know how much money they charge. And to give you an example of the insanity of prices that people charge these days, I was in San Francisco, and the Mercedes-Benz dealer in San Francisco charged $225 per hour labor. So it's always a good idea to do it yourself. And any kind of a chain, hey, they make money selling you stuff. I knew a guy who used to manage one of those, and he said they wanted to get their average ticket to be $500-$600. So they're always going to sell you stuff, whether you need it or not. You know, I personally don't trust anybody when it comes to doing work on a car. That's why I became a mechanic. And that's why I was very successful as a mechanic, because I was a good, honest mechanic, and a lot of people knew I was, so they told people I didn't have to waste money on advertising, and I had lots of happy customers. So it's hard to find a good mechanic these days, though, that's honest. I may be the last of a dying breed. Next question is Robert Wiore. Can you change to synthetic oil with a 97 Lexus that was using normal oil before? You can, but I really don't advise it. Engines kind of get used to the oil that they've been using, the additives. And if you've been using one oil the whole time, it's a better idea to just stick to that oil. Changing it, not such a smart thing. As an example, in my own personal cars, I've always liked the Castrol GTX. So I stick to it. They don't burn oil. They run fine. I'm happy. I wouldn't change something if what you have is working. Now, especially on an older car like that, sometimes I see the older ones, they change from regular conventional to synthetic oil, and they either start burning oil because it's thinner, or they start leaking oil in spots they didn't leak before. So if you got a car that doesn't have any problems, my advice is stick to what you've been using. It's worked. Why change? Next question is, Exodos, what do you think about low profile tires and run flat tires? Okay, I'm not a fan of either, to tell you the truth. The run flat tires, to begin with, they can run at a certain speed, like 50 miles an hour for a certain amount of mileage, but they're not going to last forever. And when you do have a problem with them, generally, it's the end of the tire. You got to buy another tire, and they cost a small fortune per tire. Now, low profile tires, those things are made for zooping around. They corner well because of their design. But because of that design, the low profile, they generally ride a lot rougher. Realize when you're going down the road, your taller tires, as you hit bumps, the rubber flexes. It absorbs a lot of the energy when you're driving down the road, so they don't ride that well. And of course, the real stinker is if you live in a place like I do, Houston, a big city full of a billion potholes, and you got a low profile tire on a fancy rim, you hit a big pothole. A lot of times there's not enough flex, so then the rim hits the pothole and it destroys your expensive rim. So not a fan. I'm not a fan of either of them, really. Normal tires work perfectly fine. Next question is Jason Outlaw, and he says, I got a 98 Eclipse GT, get to a quarter of a tank of gas, it starts to run. What causes that? Okay, replace your fuel pump. Odds are your fuel pump's getting weak. When you have a full tank of gas, the fuel pump's pretty much near the bottom. All the weight of that gas is pushing down, makes it easier to pump. When you get to a quarter, either you got sludge in the gas tank that's starting to clog up the pump, or all that weight that was on the top is gone, it's just a little. Either way, it's best to change the fuel pump and that sock filter before the pump, because if that gets clogged, it can do it too. And as long as you're going to change the fuel pump, always change that inline sock filter. You got to do a lot of work to get to that pump. You might as well change all the parts there rather than mess around. Next question. Fierce Jaw said, did last night's flooding affect you? Not really. I live near downtown Houston, but I live in a place that, according to the deed on my house, is called Rosemont Heights. And the heights means it's tall in the air. I'm in one of the highest parts of the city of Houston. And the advantage of water is, anybody knows about water, it seeks its own level. So if you're 20 feet higher than downtown, downtown has to flood the whole way up that 20 feet. Well, rather than go up, the water just to climb up 20 feet, it seeks its own level. So it will go 40 miles in the other direction if that's lower, which is the case for me because everything else drains into the ocean. So I really don't have to worry about flooding. The only thing I ever had to worry about was they built all these townhomes around me and it makes my area not drain quite as fast. But lately, everyone's been complaining, including me, and we forced all these townhomes to put drains on their property that drain to the street and then drain down. So that problem has stopped. We did have all that rain, and rather than get a bunch of water in my backyard, now I don't because we forced them to put drains in. Next question. Serpico Simon says, evaporator cleaner, is generic brand perform as good as manufacturer's brand? Okay, the manufacturers of the cars don't make cleaner. They're buying it from somebody else. You want to get evaporator cleaner that works good, go to any air conditioning supply store because houses are the same as cars. They work the same way. And buy the evaporator spray can. The foamy stuff seems to work the best. And just use that. That's what I've been using my whole life. The stuff that I use on evaporator cleaner inside my house is the same one I use the evaporator cleaner when I'm working on cars. Go to any AC supply store and buy it there. Next question. Kaylin Lopez says, hey, Scotty, got an 2000 Chevy Silverado, has 230,000 miles, a single cab short bed. Should I keep investing in it or sell it? Okay, well, back in 2000, that was 20 years ago car models because the 2020s are out now. They were a lot better made than they are today. If it doesn't burn much oil and still shifts okay, I'd just keep taking care of it if I were you. But if you want a trouble-free thing that you don't have to think about for a long time, I'd get rid of it and I'd buy a Toyota pickup truck and then I'd have to think about it for a really long time. It's your call there, but they were better made. Definitely do not go buy a new Chevy truck because they don't hold up like those older ones did at all. Supersonic said, what would be a good first car? Well, it depends on how much money you have to spend and what kind of a car you want and who's driving it. Let's say it's a first car for a teenager. I'd say they're going to wreck it like both my sons did their first cars. So I'd say just go get a big used car, maybe from an estate sale from an old person who either died or can't drive anymore, and get them a big solid car because they'll be safe inside and they're probably going to smack it up. If you're looking for one for yourself and you want economy, get a Toyota Corolla. If you want a little more luxurious stuff, get a Camry. And of course, it depends on how much money you want to spend, new versus used. You got to decide all that yourself. Classical Music Forever 5 says, hey, Scotty, do you think driving a manual solves most reliability problems with modern cars? Well, not all of them, but it solves an awful lot of them because today cars are so complex. The computers let the transmissions talk to the engine talk to the transmission. I've had cars towed over here that other mechanics couldn't figure out if the problem was in the transmission or the engine or what it was. Well, if you have a standard transmission, then you can totally rule out the transmission as being the problem because you're shifting it yourself by hand. So if it isn't running right, it's an engine-related problem and not a transmission. It does make them more reliable and easier to fix. There's no arguing that. Next question. JS says, can I use RTV to replace a valve cover gasket? Well, you can if it's thick enough. The problem is most valve cover gaskets are pretty thick. Now, if you want to use something to seal them, there is a sealer if you don't want to buy a gasket. And it's made by a company called Permatex. And it's called Permatex The Right Stuff. Just like that movie with Tom Cruise, right? It's super thick stuff. It comes in a spray can, and you put it all around the valve cover top, and it's thick, so it stays there. And the advantage of it is the right stuff is so well made that once you squirt it on, put it on, and put the bolts on, you can actually just drive it because it seals so quickly. Now, it's very expensive stuff. Costs you like 20 bills for one of the little bottles. But that stuff does work. Anytime you want something sealed that needs to be sealed with a regular gasket, the right stuff works fantastic. Fantastic. Of course, you can't use it for a head gasket. That's got metal and stuff in it. But for valve cover gaskets, water pump gaskets, the right stuff is fantastic. It's not cheap stuff, but it really does work well. Next question. John Seeker says, what's the best products for cleaning cloth, seats, and carpet? Well, that Resolve cleaner, it comes in a red spray can. I started using it, like 30-something years ago. I saw an ad on TV for it, and I thought, what the heck, I'll try that stuff. Because my wife was always screaming at me, since I work out of the house here, I'd be coming in and tracking grease on the rugs, and she'd get mad as a hornet and be all these grease dots. And I saw it on an ad on TV, and I squirted it out, waited like a minute, and then got a cloth towel and just wipe it, and it would come right off. The black would be right on the towel. The stuff really does work. Now, you never see it advertised anymore. I guess they don't need to advertise because the stuff really works. But I'm sold on that Resolve stuff. It really does clean stuff out. I use it a lot of time on cars, on carpets, on seats. Next question. MK Plug says, Scotty, what do you think about the Vauxhall Corsas? Okay, they don't sell them in the United States. They sell them in Europe and in England. But when I was in England, people loved them. They like driving them around, especially the diesel versions. You wouldn't buy one in the United States. You could never get parts for the stupid thing because they don't sell them there. But in other parts of the world, people tend to like them. I mean, the English people, I met a guy who had 3 of them in the last 30 years, and he said he loved them. He just drove them. The only thing he didn't like was they didn't offer one in a color that he wanted. Next question is Christopher H. I understand it's more efficient to shut your vehicle off when waiting for someone in the store, but isn't it worse for your engine to be shutting off and starting it back up? Yeah, you got a very valid point there. And here's the thing. The most wear your car ever gets is upon startup, because the oil, when you shut it off, goes down to the bottom of the engine. And nowadays, cars are all overhead cam. When I was younger, they had cams in the middle, so it wasn't as bad to lubricate. But now, when you start your car up, the cams have to get oil pumped up to them before they get lubricated. So actually, it is not a good idea to be continually starting and stopping your car, which is why I laugh about those auto stop cars to save money. You come to a stop sign, you turn the engine off, and then they start up. Now, the manufacturers claim that they have stronger bearings on the engine and lots of stuff, but they claim all kinds of things. I mean, it's going to wear the engine out faster. It's going to wear the starter out faster. They claim the starters are better built and stuff like that. But still, they're going to wear out a lot faster. And if you think about it, you're not saving that much gas if you're sitting at a stoplight for 40 seconds. It really isn't going to make all that much difference. It's just a scam so they can have higher gas mileage ratings for the EPA, for government go through. All the systems are nonsense as far as I'm concerned. Next question is KZO. Have you gotten any cars with rodent damage? Oh, yeah, all the time. The little stinkers, one, if it's cold in the winter, they'll climb under the hood because it's warm, and they want to be warm. And then they chew on things. And the weird thing is, I'm not a rodent, so I can't say, but from what the scientists tell me, They like chewing on low voltage wires because it kind of gives them a kick, like they're smoking crack or something. So they'll chew on the stupid electrical wires that still have a little bit of power to them, especially computer wires where the computers still have things powered up, and burglar alarm wires that still have power going to them. So the burglar alarm will go off if somebody tries to steal your car. And yeah, they really can create. I've had one that it ate through the guy's fuel injection system wire and it shorted everything out, and it cost $1,500 to fix it. So they can do a lot of damage because but I do have that video. You can get those ultrasonic pest machines, and it scares rodents away. They really work. Put them on your hood, and then they won't go into there anymore. Next question. Roshan Shaji says, do gasoline engines have blow-by? Well, yeah, all engines with pistons have some kind of blow-by. The pistons go up and down, and they're sealed by piston rings. And they're not just one ring. A lot of them have 3 or 4 sets of rings. They got pressure rings, they got oil control rings. And what happens is if the oil control rings go bad, then you get blow-by, because the top pressure ring that keeps the pressure when they fire the gasoline mixture, if the oil control rings go bad, then as the compression rings go up and down, when they go down, they're going to push a ton of pressure into the engine. Then that creates a lot of pressure, and then that will blow by oil, and it'll get back into the engine on the intake, and it will burn a lot of oil. That's why you change your oil and filter all the time. That keeps all the rings working so they last a long time. Next question. Ken Picayo says, are Suzuki cars getting any better? Well, it's hard for me to gauge it because they pulled out of the United States a long time ago. And I was always kind of amazed because Suzuki makes killer motorcycles. I had a 750 Suzuki. That thing was, whoa, you could throttle the heck out of it. It would still keep running. It wouldn't leak oil, started it up, ran like a Banshee. They were insane motorcycles. But the cars that they sold in the United States, they were crappy little runabouts, and they pulled out. Nobody wanted them. I think they were junky little cars. But that said, all over the world where gasoline is super expensive, people seem to buy Suzukis. Now, I got friends in Australia, they buy them, and they say, yeah, people like them for city, knock around, run around cars, and those little Suzuki Jeepy type things. A lot of people swear by them. But see, they failed. The Jeepy ones failed in the United States because Americans like things that are a little bigger, not tiny little things. I had a customer that had one of those Suzuki little Jeeps, and he moved from Houston to Jacksonville, Florida. And when he drove it there, he called me. He said, man, I'm getting rid of this thing. It's horrible on the highway. It's just the worst thing in the world driving on the highway. And I'm going to be doing more highway driving now. They're okay in the city, but on the highway, yeah, they're like riding around on a washing machine. Next question. Aaron Rodriguez said, should I trade in my car for another Honda stick shift, or should I get a stick shift muscle type car? Well, what do you really want? You got a Honda, and they're not muscle cars. They get really good gas mileage. They're fun to drive. They're tight handling. You go to a big muscle car, you're going to spend a fortune on gas, a fortune on insurance, and generally their values depreciate quickly because, the American muscle cars, they're fun to drive around, but, as they get old, they generally don't tend to hold up all that well. You got to decide, you're kind of apples and oranges there. You want a nice little economy car that, is zippy, or you want to get a muscle car that you can spend a lot more money in gasoline and the value is going to plummet faster. That's your choice. Next question. Here he says, why is dot 3 used rather than dot 5? Okay, brake fluid, they all work perfectly fine. It's just that some of them will last a little bit longer than others. And you can't use the racing type ones in modern non-racing cars that have ABS because it messes up the ABS systems. They don't operate correctly. And you can't mix different types. Like you can't mix a silicone-based one with a non-silicone-based one. And really, brake fluid always works fine. It's just that the newer ones have a little higher boiling point, but that's for race cars. You're not driving like that. You're not driving 200 miles an hour and slamming the brake for the corner and then take off and then slamming the brake for the corner. Nobody drives like that. And you really don't have to worry about the brake fluid boiling in your car system unless you drive like an absolute crazy lunatic. Any brake fluid is fine. You stick to with what it comes for. And really, on your own street car, don't ever put the silicone stuff in because it's just too radical. And like I said, the ABS systems won't work right with it. Next question. Tom Schoen says 2014 Toyota RAV4, 2014 Honda CR-V. Okay, that's a very good question because they're very similar vehicles. That would be what you like. They're both pretty dependable vehicles, and they both have minor problems here and there. But my advice would be road test them both, see which one you liked rode better. And of course, you're talking about 6-year-old ones, so they're both used cars. So you got to check both of them out first because one of them might have been taken care of and one of them might have been wrecked and the other one not wrecked. When you're buying a used car, it's hard to compare them because you don't know the history of both cars. They're both excellent vehicles. That would just depend on how you like how it rides, how it runs, and then you decide yourself. But either way, believe me, pay a mechanic to check it out. I had a customer bring me a RAV4 the other day, and I would have said, go ahead and buy it. So he brought it over for me to check out with the previous owner, and the previous owner was just a scumbag. The thing had been wrecked. He didn't tell anything about it. I plugged in my scan tool, and it wouldn't even connect. It said it can't connect to the computer, and I know that thing had been a disaster area. Don't buy it. So always have a mechanic check out a used car when it's that kind of money. I mean, if you're buying a car for $500 and it runs and it shifts, go ahead, but you're going to pay decent money for either of those. Have a mechanic check out before you shell out any money. Next question is OJM Co. Hey, Scotty, you should set up Streamland so we can donate money with questions. Nah, I'm already a millionaire. I didn't need you to donate me any money. I'm here helping people in the world. I'm having good karma. I like doing it for free. I don't need this, donate money things. It's kind of silly when somebody's rich and having people donate the money. That makes no sense at all. I mean, yeah, there's greed in this world, but hey, I'm not one of those people. I'm just here to help everybody out. You don't need to donate me anything. Just ask your questions and I'll pick out the good ones and answer them. Next question. Mr. Nacho 1955 says, what causes your back tires to wear out every 10,000 miles in my Nissan Altima 2011? Okay, if they keep wearing out, two things could go wrong. The shocks are bad in the back or the alignment's off. Now, if it's the shocks, they're going to wear cupped. If the tires are cupped on the edge, the shocks are bad and they need replacing. If it's the alignment, then go get it checked for any worn parts and get it aligned. As people always talk about a front end alignment. Well, with modern cars, you every once in a while need front and rear alignment because the rears are adjustable too. Now, when I was a young mechanic, cars were all rear wheel drive. There was no adjustment on the back because they had a big differential, solid, made out of cast iron differential. The rear wheels weren't adjustable, but now they're independent suspension and they're adjustable. So you'd want to get those checked for an alignment too. But do see if the shocks are worn out because that'll do it too. But then they'll have that cupped wear, like I said. Next question. Michael Hatless says, rust module, does it work? I always wondered about that stuff myself. So I asked an engineer, and the engineer explained that it's a load of baloney on a car. Now, they do have sacrificial anodes on ships in the ocean and salt water. And the engineer explained that those work because the ship is floating in the water. And he said, if your car was floating in the water, they would work. But it's driving on the land. And he said, they don't work at all, man. It's got to be completely immersed for that kind of stuff to work. With it just driving down the road and salt water and spray and ocean, or if you drive by the ocean here, like if you live in Galveston, or if you live up north, they put salt on the road and you get salt water and salt splashed on, those rust modules don't work at all. Let's face it, if they did, they'd make them that way so the cars didn't rust. Next question. Stephen Jodane says, is a right-hand drive Celica in the U.S. good? Well, I guess if you never pass people, it is. The reason they got the steering wheel on the left side for us in the United States is because we drive on the right side of the road. So when you're passing people, you can see into the other lane. If you got a right-hand drive car and you're driving on the right, you can't see the other lane that well. I have driven right-hand drive cars where they drive on the left side of the road when I went to the British Virgin Islands, because it's crazy. It's an English island, but almost all the cars are right-hand drive because most of the cars come from Florida. It's a lot closer to Florida than it is to England. So everybody's driving these American cars there, but they're driving on the wrong side of the road. Believe me, it's not that easy to pass people. Now, there it wasn't too bad because most of the island had a speed limit of 20 miles an hour. So you're not going that fast. But, you know, unless you're a mailman who's delivering mail in the country, it's not that smart of an idea to have it on the opposite side because it isn't that safe for driving when you're passing. Next question. Brianta Garcia says, what's the best way to clean a car's convertible soft top? Okay, those soft tops, they're going to get dirty and they're going to wear and fade. That's just how it goes. But if you want to keep it clean as possible, my experience is I use those kits that are for leather, even though it's not leather. The leather good kits come with a cleaning solution and then a preserving solution. And it also works on those soft tops. And I use them. That's what I use. You're still going to get them fading. They're still going to crack because you're folding them, putting it on. They're just a pain, actually. You know, as far as I'm concerned, the best convertible design ever, even though it's a Mercedes, was those metal ones. And the metal ones, you know, they articulate, and the metal top never wears out. It's not going to have any problems. You got a rag top, hey, it's going to wear out. That's just the way that it goes. Next question. Isaac Marisco says, what are your thoughts on a Cummins diesel? Okay, I'm not a Chrysler fan by any stretch of the imagination, but Cummins makes those diesel engines. They are excellent diesel engines. There's nothing wrong with the Cummins diesel engines. It's just that a lot of them are in Chryslers and the rest of the vehicle isn't so hot, but they can still last because they're solid built engines. There's nothing wrong with those diesel engines. You know, they're big engines. They're not fantastic on gas mileage, but they put out quite a bit of power. I got a customer that has one that's still running at 350,000 miles. It's the original engine. Parker F says, Scotty, can you please help me? My sunroof's up open on my 2009 Honda CR-V. I bought it and it's going to rain. Okay. Sunroofs, they have a motor and they have a chain drive that opens it and closes it. You got a problem with that. First thing you want to do is check all the fuses. Pray it's got a blown fuse. And if it does, put another fuse in, turn the switch, and if you have to manually pull it till it shuts, then shut it and never use it again. Those things are a royal pain in the butt when they go out and it costs a fortune to repair. And I found that generally, as long as the fuse is good and you push the switch, If you push as much as you can or have somebody stand outside the car and kind of conk on a little bit of it, and if it starts to close, once you get it closed, leave it closed and never use it again. Because I've seen people, when those assemblies with the chains and the motors break, spend over $1,000 fixing them. Why bother? Close it and leave it shut. And you can usually force it to get closed. If the fuse is blown, change it. Or if it isn't, just keep banging and clanging it. When it does close, leave it closed and don't open it again. Next question. Christopher Rensselaer says, Scotty, is the Leaf the best vehicle Nissan makes? Okay, well, the Leaf is an electric car. And I have 2 customers with them who were totally happy with them. They got a limited range and all that stuff, but they didn't have any problems with them. I'll give them that. It's an all-electric car. And so it doesn't have head gasket problems. It doesn't have automatic transmission problems that other Nissan had because it doesn't have a head gasket. It doesn't have an automatic transmission. It's electric motor drive. And I'd have to say it may be one of the best vehicles that they presently make. If you want an electric car, just realize the pluses and minuses. There's no backup power system. You run out of power, it stops and won't go anywhere. It's not like the BMW electric car that when it runs out of power, then a little 2-cylinder BMW motorcycle engine turns on and then that runs the electric motors. With the Leaf, you run out of power, you don't go anywhere. Next question. Scott Keller says, what's your opinion on the Toyota T100? Okay, that was the first big V8 truck, pickup truck that Toyota made. And they made them in an old forklift factory in Indiana that they made forklifts for Toyotas for years. And they're very reliable trucks. You know, they were the first big V8 truck. Toyota was never into pickup trucks. And then they say, hey, Americans like buying this stuff. So they started making them, and they sell the heck out. I mean, I know rednecks here out in the country here in Texas, and they used to always drive American pickups. First time they bought themselves a big Tundra pickup truck, they said, I'll never buy anything but Toyota. This thing doesn't break, and it runs and it runs. So, you know, if they can sell rednecks to them, they're doing something right. Next question is Caesar Bed. What's the best classic pickup truck for me to buy as a project and start wrenching with my son? Okay, I'd say you could get a 60s Ford pickup or a 70s Ford pickup. The 60s are all carbureted, and of course, you're better off with a carbureted one than a fuel engine because then you can teach them stuff. And if the carburetor goes bad, you can throw it away. And you can put an Edelbrock on for like $300 that's going to run perfectly fine. It's so much simpler than even in the later 70s, you know, they're all going to fuel injection, all that stuff. And that's a pain in the butt. Things can break, cost a fortune because even though it's an older car, it's still fuel injected. The parts are expensive. Get one that's carbureted. You can't beat the Fords. Parts are available for those things forever. Next question. Michael says, Scotty, I got a 91 Oldsmobile Tornado. I changed the fuel pump, filter strainer, cranks, but it won't start. We're going to be... Well, I got a whole video on that. Fixing the car that cranks but doesn't start up. Watch the video. You can get all the things. It can be a whole bunch of things. I'm surprised at an old Tornado. There's that front wheel drive job. You know, they were interesting cars. You got to check to see, does it have spark? A spark plug sparking. Does it have fuel going to the engine? Spray some in the car air filter. Take it out and spray it in the hole. If it starts, then you know it's not getting fuel to the engine. And it's 91, so it's fuel injected. It could be it's got fuel injection problem. There's a lot of things, but watch that video. Fixing a car that cranks but doesn't start up. Next question. Dallas Williams says, what do you think of Castrol adds 20,000-mile guarantee? I don't think anything of any company's guarantees for that stuff because they say, oh, use this and I'll change it every 20,000 miles. We guarantee it. What do they guarantee? You know, I've never seen anybody that used any of the products from any of the companies that said that ever got another engine if their engine blew up. They would say it's a pre-existing condition. Oh, well, we guarantee against excessive oil consumption, and we don't think yours is excessive. You try to get something done with one of those guarantees, just like years ago that Teflon oil that they made in Houston, as Lubrelon company made it, and they gave all kinds of guarantees. But to my knowledge, they never put a free engine in anybody's car. So I think most of this stuff's a lot of baloney. Well, that's it for this week. Remember, every day of the week, I upload 2 videos on the Scotty Kilmer channel on YouTube. So subscribe and hit that bell so you get notified. Otherwise, they won't tell you I'm putting up new videos. And I'm here every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, answering your questions on YouTube Live, and Thursdays at 1 p.m. Remember, it's Central Standard Time, U.S. I'll catch you then.